I think we've got it. This is all new, so thank you for your patience. Anyhow, I was telling you a little bit about Green Drinks International. So we're part of a thing that has over 450 groups meeting in the world, which is very cool. We always like to find out who else has joined in for this month. And we have a whole bunch of folks in the US, so I'm going to start with them. And I want to know if you've been to any of these places. So Portland, Maine. Yeah? Good. Baltimore, Maryland.
Yep.
Lewisburg, West Virginia. Oh, good. Orlando, Florida, I bet. Yeah. Reading, Pennsylvania. Yeah. Warsaw, Indiana. Yes. Really? Is it a suburb? I didn't get a chance to look. Of Indianapolis? Yeah. Yeah. All right. And our big international one is Panama City, Panama. Cool. Sorry, haven't heard anything about Panama recently, I know. But anyhow, so we're part of 450 other groups that are meeting and gathering because they think it's also important to build their environmental community, bring people together to learn. And then at the end of our time, we always do community announcements because we want to connect you back to the community and how you can be involved. So, and always we have a program. So we have a great program this evening coming up. Next month, we will have Scott Kuykendall, correct? Oh, good. Yeah, and he's going to talk about PFAS, which is no
speaker from Illinois.
Okay. We have a speaker coming to talk about that very subject in March, and it will be March 5th because it's in 28 days, 4 weeks exactly. We do that this time. An expert on it. There we go. So thanks for playing along, and we want to introduce you to Anne, who's going to introduce our speaker. Thank you again for being here.
Okay, I need to speak the microphone. We play musical microphones.
Thank you.
Yeah, at least it works tonight. Okay, so I have the honor of introducing Jen Walling, but a lot of you already know Jen. She's, yeah, I figured that. And then how many of you are individual members of IEC? That's quite a few. That's good.
I just joined.
Yay, Mary Lou. For those of you who do not know Jen, Jen has been the executive director of the Illinois Environmental Council now since 2011. And she has a Juris Doctorate and a master's and a bachelor's in natural resources. So she knows what she's talking about. And you guys have all benefited from what she is able to do for us in Springfield. And I think her best attribute is how she can get all of us in one online, keeping up to date with what's going on in Springfield and how best to tackle it. So without further ado, here's Jen Walling.
Hi, friends. It's so great to have some of my favorite people in the room. I definitely remember when I first started this job being invited up to a number of Green Drinks and Defenders events. So this is just a really special and important area, not only for environmental activism, but for conservation. So thank you so much for having me. IEC also is celebrating a very special anniversary this year. You can see we've been around since 1975. February 1st was actually our 50th anniversary. So for those of you and folks that have been involved in IEC, and we're a little bit of a different environmental organization because we were formed by other environmental organizations. So in 1975, a whole bunch of folks got together, the Sierra Club, the Isaac Walton League, the Audubon Society got together, and they said, we need a person who represents us in Springfield. We need a person who is the lobbyist for the environmental community. And so they started IEC. And with that, we have over 130 different environmental organizations that are members. I know there are several in this room even of folks that are involved in IEC. And we make sure that we're collaborating and we're representing those groups. I always kind of make this dorky analogy of thinking of us as the community's soil, just making sure that the governments that we work with are places where our ideas can grow. So we're making sure that that soil is aerated, it has enough organic matter, and we are ready to grow the ideas that are going to make our world a sustainable, better place. And so I'm going to talk a little bit. I know.
Just down button.
Down button. Great. Oh, there we go. Okay. Great. So I'm going to start a little bit. We work a lot at the state legislature, but we actually have a very robust city council lobbying program. And we're working on expanding more, and we're doing a little bit of federal work. And I will, before I go into our state work, talk a little bit about how that federal work is impacting us before we talk about all those bills. Maybe I'll just, no, we're going to end on a positive note. We got a lot to do. We can do it. So I'm going to start a little bit of a very brief civics lessons, but if you don't know a whole lot about the state legislature, like if you think that your state senator is Dick Durbin, it's okay, he's your US senator. But if you thought that, maybe spend some time looking up the state legislature. And one of the things that I always say to people of any, you know, whether it's high school students I'm working with or others, some of this is made to be inaccessible to the public. So these are processes that they don't necessarily want people to participate in. They don't want to necessarily hear voices. And I feel like that is 50% of my job, is to make sure the voices of the people who care about the environment are heard, the people who are our allies are heard. And so, you know, don't be embarrassed if that was the thought in your head. I mean, you don't need to say it out loud right now, but now that I've mentioned it, you should go to ilga.gov, and there's a legislator lookup tool. And, you know, in this area, you've got a lot of Senator DeWitt, Senator Wilcox. You got Rep Ness, who is a little bit. Rep Ness is fantastic, Green Caucus member. You got Rep Weber. Almost got the whole list. Ugasti, Rep Ugasti, he's on the Environment Committee. Yep. So those are some of the reps and senators that are out here. And, you know, I know that there are folks that may be conservative, but there are issues they can be influenced on. So keep and maintain your relationships. In the Illinois General Assembly, there's 118 House members and 59 senators. And each Senate district has 2 House districts, but you only have, they're continuous, so you only have 1 House member and 1 senator that represents you. It is a super duper majority of Democrats, since that's the technical term, super duper. But you know, despite that, it's still sometimes a challenge to pass environmental legislation. You know, we're not California or New York that can do all the things, but we are really making progress, especially in the Midwest, where we're probably competing with Minnesota a lot. But there's other states we're competing with on different things that, you know, I'm going to talk about a very important river access bill we've been working on, where Iowa and Wisconsin are just outshining us on our access to outdoor recreation. And Missouri is just outshining us on their investment in conservation. And so how we compete with the states in the Midwest, really important. So a little bit about that. And then just make sure you're looking up a little bit about your lawmakers. ilga.gov has some profiles. There might be pieces where you went to the same school, you live in the same area. All of those things are really great. You know, for us, we look for a lot of different information about lawmakers and the way that we can connect with them. For example, we have this enormous spreadsheet with lots of info about lawmakers, including things like their religion. And when does that come in handy? Well, when we were working on the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, and the Pope came out with an encyclical, Laudato Si, we knew which lawmakers were Catholic and which ones we wanted to invite to a press conference to talk about the Pope's encyclical. And so all of these things can be really important, and we think about messages and messengers, and it's things you can think about too. But their picture and bios are online. We just started the 104th General Assembly, so there are some new people, but you can look them up online, see what committees they're on. This is Senator Laura Fine, who is the co-chair of the Green Caucus in the Illinois Senate. A little bit about what a lobbyist is, because I think that some people, you know, they hear lobbyists and they're like, ew, gross. And there are some people that you say lobbyists and they're like, what the heck is that? So there's definitely a huge range. And I am a registered lobbyist. I'm registered with the state of Illinois. I'm registered with the city of Chicago. There's certain legal definitions of why I meet that definition, but lobbying is advocacy. And we think about lobbying as being the, when you go to a courtroom, you need a lawyer. Lobbyists are the guide to the state legislature that is helping you figure out how the system works, et cetera. But we view ourselves, we're do-gooder lobbyists. We view ourselves as I view myself as wanting to open it up to as many people as possible to ensure that you know the process and when to activate. And so lobbying is advocacy. We spend a lot of time talking to other lobbyists, whether it's the manufacturers or the chemical industry. Relationships really matter in Springfield. There's other types of lobbyists like business driven. So there's lobbyists that represent Walmart, there's represents the Illinois Restaurant Association, all sorts of things. And then there's contract lobbyists. And sometimes we even rely on those folks. One of the things I find hardest is budget lobbying. And so I have a person that I've hired to help me with pieces of the budget. And they're just on contract. But we also have former state rep Elaine Neckrits is up here, and she is contract lobbyist for the Clean Jobs Coalition and also for a lot of the transit work. So she's played an incredibly important role in this. So not all lobbyists bad. My piece here. I'm just going to quickly go through a little bit of the process and where we're at right now. This is a bit of the process summarized. Illinois is a state where a bill has to go through one chamber and then the other chamber, and then has to have the same language and goes to the governor. It can't just go through one chamber and go through the other chamber and meet at the top, which is what some states do when they do a reconciliation process. We go first chamber committee floor vote, second chamber committee floor vote, concurrence governor. Easy, right? So this is also what that process looked like and how a bill becomes a law in Illinois. These are all the different steps that it can take, and I'm always learning new things. But the important part for you to know right now is a little bit about where the deadlines are and where we are in the process. So if you have a new idea for a bill, you can tell me tonight, but I might make you wait a whole year for it to go in unless it's that good, because bill introduction deadline is actually on Friday. I think I have almost all of our bills introduced. I'm feeling good. But Friday, January 24th was the last date to have the Legislative Reference Bureau, which writes bills, put them in. So a lot of this stuff, I'm going to go through a lot of things tonight where we have a bill number, but it's like maybe I got the bill number today, and so I don't have them in there. But the next time I'm going to do this presentation next week, I'm going to have bill numbers for all of these. And so we're hitting bill introduction deadline, and then there'll be committee, and then third reading, and then you go to the other chamber committee, third reading. Third reading is when they take a vote. And then there is adjournment, which is May 31st, and it's an important date under the Constitution, because if they don't do stuff by May 31st at midnight, it can't be effective in the same calendar year without a supermajority vote. And so that is really important for things like the budget that need to happen and other bills. So generally, they're going to go until May 31st. Let's skip that. And one of the other pieces that I want to encourage for you, and this is a research study of congressional aides, but I think that it still really applies to state lawmakers as well. And I'll tell a couple of stories here. The more in-person visits from constituents, in-person personalized visits, the better the result in terms of the impact on the lawmaker. But that's not to discourage you if you're asked to do a postcard or a form email. Social media can make a difference, but one of the things with social media is unless they know who you are, they don't know that you're in the district or not. And so that can be a piece that can make an impact, but they need to know you're a constituent, that you care about the issue, that you're a real person, and they need to know your story. So there's a couple of times where I've seen, there's so many times I've seen this be so impactful. So one example, one thing that we do as a group is we take lawmakers to go see stuff, right? There was one point early in my career that I saw the Illinois Manufacturers Association post this post about like, oh, we took this lawmaker to a lollipop factory today, like literally a lollipop factory. And I was like, I have way better things than the lollipop factory to offer, which is why I often take lawmakers canoeing or hiking or go see solar panels. I've only had maybe one lawmaker tip over when we were canoe, but they afterward told people that if they vote the wrong way, I'm going to throw them in 55-degree water. And I've never contested that allegation. But that is one thing that is really important. But there's one year that we were walking a bunch of lawmakers around the farmers market in Springfield, which starts in May, and they're still in. And we have a lot of local food items that we do in terms of policy. So we had some farmers behind there prepped to talk about the different things we need them to talk about. Well, we go to this one booth, and the farmer is talking about how he wants to grow industrial hemp to have another product on his farm. Industrial hemp, great, because it's reduced, basically no pesticide usage, it's nitrogen fixing, it's really good for the soil, and he really wanted to grow it, and at the time it wasn't legal. Well, his lawmaker was there to hear him, came on the tour, and his lawmaker went on the floor that day. The vote happened, and he told the story about how Chad wanted to grow industrial hemp on his farm, and that's why he was voting for the bill. And so that personal story really mattered. But I'll also tell you, these form email messages can matter too. There was a piece where we were fighting a road widening into an environmental justice community, and it was going to be in Senate Exec Committee where it was prepped to just fly through. We did an action alert to a lot of people, which if you're on IEC's email list, you get asked to do action alerts, but fill them out because, we actually, because it was such short timing, because we'd done it that day, we printed them out and we distributed them to the lawmakers in the Senate so that they would see them, because sometimes it can take a while. But we handed a pack of maybe like 80 of them to a state senator from the south side of Chicago right before she walked in. And she's flipping through it and she's like, oh yeah, these are all my constituents. And like, oh, they all want me to vote no. But so she gets up there in exec committee and she, after a while listens to the testimony and she waves them around and she goes, I just got these before I walked in and my constituents want to vote no. So I'm going to be voting no today, which was not something that we expected. But, those messages made a difference. And there's often times where even if I haven't gotten around to talk to all the lawmakers, they'll come up to me and be like, why am I getting so many emails about bobcat hunting? Tell me what's up with this. And so those things really make a difference. They make my job easier. They really do tell lawmakers that you care about something. So keep doing it if you've done it. And then I don't have in here witness slips. Witness slips are a good way to weigh in on something and show support. But I would tell you, I always want your witness slip paired with an email to your lawmaker, because a lot of people don't realize the witness slips don't go to your lawmaker. They're just something that's filed in the record for the committee. And if there's a lot of them, they may not even get read. So always, if you're, there's sometimes we really want to show a lot of witness slips so that we can show a lot of support for something. And that is important. It's an important tool. But if you're doing that, like I said, your lawmaker is not seeing it. So write your lawmaker. We always pair those things together and listen to the tactics. I'm going to talk a little before I go into the things that we're doing this year about the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. And this is just one slide on it. We have a whole presentation on it. But before I talk about anything, I want to talk about CEJA. The Climate and Equitable Jobs Act is a bill that we passed in Illinois in 2021 that is now law. That if you are seeing wind and solar, this is how we put more wind and solar on the ground throughout the whole state. We want to put Illinois on a path towards 100% renewable energy by 2050. And I don't know if some of you are part of St. Charles, Geneva, et cetera, where they purchased the really big coal plant that's the 7th largest emitter of carbon in the whole country. This bill closes that in 2045 and starts transitioning us away from fossil fuels, closing coal plants and methane gas plants in 2030. And so this is a really strong bill. We have a plan for renewable energy in Illinois. And I know it's really frustrating right now to see a lot of the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act repealed and rolled back and all those questions. But we have a plan in Illinois for renewable energy and to tackle climate change. One study I've seen from the University of Maryland says that we can reduce emissions 40 to 65% from where they are today with non-federal actors. So that is the states that are committed to 100% clean energy, that's private sector that already is headed into that direction. And sure, we don't have the overall force of the federal government to guide those, but we have a lot of states heading in that direction and wanting to do this. And so there won't be as many incentives, but there's still great incentives to put up solar in Illinois. There's still great incentives to reduce energy. We're still working on building out our EV network. And so all of those things still in place, and there's even more that we can do as a state. So I'm excited about where we're going. Of course, it's frustrating and the chaos is frustrating, but we have a path for renewable energy in Illinois that's really strong. I want to talk about some of our key priorities for the year, and then I will take any questions that folks have. We tend to divide our bills into 6 different areas. And I'm always a challenge remembering the 6 areas, but clean water, transportation, energy, open space, food production, and zero waste. And then we think, I did it. We think about environmental justice throughout all of it. But we do have a couple of bills that are really important on environmental justice. And especially, one of the things that we have heard at the federal government is that basically all of the environmental justice staff have been told they're on leave. And so that's almost 20 people in the Region 5 office, 100 people nationwide. And, there's some concerns around data related to environmental justice. But one of the things that we've been pushing for in Illinois is a different framework to look at environmental justice communities. Because the framework that our state government uses right now is one that only looks at race and income to determine environmental justice. That may not hold up in Supreme Court when you are adding race as one of the factors, especially a key factor in something. But, magically, I'm joking there, somehow, when you layer on where the pollution areas are with income, you end up with the environmental justice areas. So making sure that we have, wow, surprise. But but when you look at all of these key areas of where the toxicity is, where the pollution is, you end up with environmental justice areas. And we, through Illinois, and actually through the Future Energy Jobs Act passed in 2017, put together a framework for Illinois that has almost 30 factors. We use it for the Illinois Solar for All program, which determines where we put low-income solar in the state. And we've invested almost $200 million towards low-income solar over several years. And so we have that system, and we want that to be in place for pollution as well. But one of the things and I'm not going to go into all bills like this, but I think this one is really important. One of the things with environmental permits, and this is not, it's not quite full, but when you want to pollute water, you get a National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit, NPDES permit is what it's called. Often the bodies of water that you're getting a NPDES permit, so they put the pollution into, have something called the total maximum daily load. And the total maximum daily load is how much all of the polluters that are on that particular system can put in. With air, we don't have anything like that. We have attainment areas and non-attainment areas. And so actually I think McHenry County was taken out of, you're in attainment areas now. So you're not, the non-attainment areas are the other counties around here, but you were taken out under the Rauner administration. Good or bad, I don't know, as long as you're meeting those pieces. But one of the things that we want to look at is when you put a large air permit into an environmental justice site, you need to do a cumulative impact analysis, because what we're doing right now is we're getting these large air permits and we're putting them here and here and here and here, and they're all next to each other, and then that community has unsafe, unhealthy air. And so we're hoping that we can include a cumulative impact analysis that could actually lead to a denial if the air is going to be unsafe to breathe in a particular community because of the impact of everything around. And one of the other things we're looking at that I have heard from so many communities about is the impact of diesel pollution from trucking. We're just seeing so much more trucking and shipping facilities. One of the things, I don't think we're going to pass this one this year, but we've been working on monitoring air pollution in areas where commercial shipping facilities are going on, because again, a shipping facility doesn't require an air permit because they're not emitting, they don't have a smokestack, they're not emitting things into the air. But if you're somebody that lives near a trucking facility, you understand that you're seeing an increase in particulate matter and in air pollution near that facility. So that's a piece that we're looking at as well. Probably not something we're doing this year, but we're definitely looking. And a little energy and transportation, a huge amount of our work. This is way too much, too many words on a page, but I think you all heard last month, I listened in a little bit to all of the transit agencies, but we have work that we're doing on the Clean and Equitable Transportation campaign. We not only want to make sure that we're funding transit at a minimum of 1.5 billion a year, we want to make sure that the system is equitable, that it's offering increased and improved operations. I was just talking, I actually went to Germany with Senator DeWitt from around here, who is really thinking about this bill, you guys. So we gotta contact him and make sure his constituents make sure that his constituents know that they support him supporting transit. And I think that is a really important thing that you can do. But you know, we were out there, and for example, in Munich, in Bavaria, there's 41 different transit agencies, and they all talk to each other, right? And so you get off the train, and there's a bus planned to arrive when you get off the train, or you know, there's I know there's a schedule. Yeah, there's a schedule that you can get on. But you know, one of the things I really learned from that trip was that those communities in the 70s and in the 90s, when it came to Berlin, came up with the intent that they wanted to do this. So I feel really positive that we can head in that direction. It's going to require funding. It's going to require some governance changes, maybe not the full thing that we've proposed, which has been the Metropolitan Mobility Act to arrange things by type of transport rather than separating them by region. But there's going to need to be major changes that happen. And we think this also needs to be coupled with things that reduce carbon emissions and make the transportation the #1 source of carbon emissions now. And we need to make sure that the vehicles that are contributing the most climate emissions are paying the most towards the problem. So a polluter pays system to make sure that we're looking at that. And there's actually some really interesting pieces I'm seeing the labor unions propose on transit funding that is very polluter pays model. So that will be super interesting. We're also working very hard on standards for trucks and cars to make sure that more electric trucks and electric cars are manufactured and sold. I know there's a lot of work being done by this governor on infrastructure. And then buses are a really key component. That one is so exciting. There's a lot of grants from IEPA on that. And of course, pedestrian and cyclist safety. On energy, you know, we passed CEJA, and we do have some tweaks that need to happen with CEJA. Some of that almost happened during the lame duck session that happened, but not all of it. So there are some pieces. We've been working really hard on energy efficiency and even more to the ComEd area, but Ameren, which is the southern part of the state, they do not need to meet the same standards as ComEd, and we want to bring parity to energy efficiency. That's really important. And then there are pieces on transmission, on capacity. How do we get renewable energy on the ground and connected more quickly? Because we have a plan for renewable energy in Illinois, but our regional transmission operators don't necessarily have a plan. So how do we make sure that we get in there? So we'll have a bill, the Clean and Reliable Grid Act, and then we're working on new incentives to the electrified buildings through building decarbonization. So there'll be a few this year that are put out. And we're still working on tweaking our carbon sequestration bill that was passed last year to fix some pieces of it, and making sure that municipal utilities can take advantage of solar. So those are some priorities. They all.
You're disconnected.
Oh no, I'm good.
Okay, good.
There you go. But what I'm most excited about this year, I mean, I'm excited about the climate stuff, right? But the zero waste items, which, you know, often we don't get a whole lot of grant money for, but we really got to make a difference on. These items are so important. And you guys, I think this is the year we're going to ban phone foodware. I think I'm gonna predict it. We're real close. We've gotten it through the House before. In 2023, we got it through the House. This year, we proposed Senate Bill 1531 in the Senate, and it is a ban. It takes place in 2030, which I know is rough. It's not what we wanted, but it bans everything. And there was a discussion about a phased-in approach, but it would ban it in hospitals. It would ban it in schools. It would ban it in anywhere that it would be used. We would ban foam foodware. And we're looking at, you know, I'm not saying styrofoam because that is a brand name, but polystyrene foam foodware, you know, just the worst of the worst when it comes to plastic. Styrene's a carcinogen. It's dangerous to create. It's dangerous to eat off of. It breaks into little particles that will last until the end of time, even though it's not a huge part of litter. But I really think this is the year. And we're getting very close. We've negotiated with a lot of different parties. We'll be the first state in the Midwest to do it. And that I just, we may see some good news on plastic bags this year too. So just, you know, I'm just teasing it a bit. I think that, I think when we look at it, you know, we have a really huge budget deficit this year, and we're looking for things that will protect the environment without having to spend a lot of money. And so those are some things that I think are really seriously being looked at. I know there's also a lawmaker who has a bill on microfibers in laundry machines. And then we have another bill about plastic by request only. So if you're ordering delivery, you have to request utensils, for example. So everybody's excited about that one. But we also have a bill that bans PFAS. It talks about, you're going to learn about that soon. There's a bunch of PFAS bills this year, and that's per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, these forever chemicals. We have a bill that bans them in consumer products that are close contact with people. So we're looking at food packaging, cookware, clothing, personal care products, and banning them from being intentionally added. There's also a polluter pays bill. There's a whole bunch of PFAS bills we're going to see this year. I don't have a ton of hope. I think I can get it through the House. I don't know if I can get it through the Senate. So we'll see when we're looking at it. Try it. There's a lot being done this year also on organics. So there is a, you know, I have landfill methane emissions here, but Senator Johnson from Lake County proposed a organic ban from landfills, which I am really pumped about. We're really serious. She really wants to get it done. It's a long time period to get there, so we can build up the infrastructure we need for composting, for food waste recovery, for, you know, not throwing away as much food. And so that one is really exciting as well. And on open space, this is our third year working on wetlands, trying to undo the Sackett versus US EPA decision that got rid of protections on probably a third of wetlands in Illinois, the isolated wetlands. Just, I can't believe we don't have it done yet, because I think we look at all of the flooding that's happening, and it's wetlands. We're just filling our kidneys in. And so we're really hoping that we can do it. We really need the Department of Natural Resources to step up. So we're hoping we get there. But that one, again, you'll hear, and we're gonna try to make a difference on that one. And then we've also been trying to respond to a Supreme Court case in Illinois that has called into question our right to recreate on Illinois rivers. There was a Supreme Court case that said that the Illinois Legislature needs to define navigability more, so that it's clear that we can access the flow of the river. So it's not, if it's not a public body of water and the the bed is not owned by a public government, there may be some questions. And that's why I look at Iowa and Wisconsin. You can paddle down just about anything. But when we've put this in, our Farm Bureau has been like, oh, the way you wrote it, you're going to paddle in my bathtub. And I'm like, no, thank you. And not even interested in it. Yeah, not interested. But I do want to do rivers, lakes, and streams in Illinois. So we're really hopeful on that one this year. I think we may have a solution to propose. that maybe list them out to make Farm Bureau more comfortable, but we're working on that one. No, and well, actually, still in open space. One bill that is not in here that's already introduced, and I think it's House Bill 1605, conservation easements, which, there's a lot of nature preserves, there's a lot of land trusts that are up here. They often have conservation easements, so the ability to oversee the conservation of a property and keep it in conservation permanently. We're looking at being able to give them to federally and state recognized tribes, because there are Native Americans that want the ability to manage the conservation of a piece of property. So they'd own that easement, and they would be in charge of the conservation, which is often very important when there's religious or burial grounds. So we've been working with Ho-Chunk in Wisconsin for that. Anytime there's Native American stuff, there's a thing about casinos, but you can't do that on a property with a conservation easement. And we're really excited to be working with the tribes to bring that forward. Yeah, it's a really cool one. But that one's already introduced. Ag and conservation, not on here at all. We did introduce a bill this year that requires agriculture to have a 10-foot buffer from rivers, lakes, and streams. Just put that one in. It's going to make some people real upset. Yeah. We copied Minnesota's law, word for word. Iowa also has a buffer rule. And so we put that law in just because we, not only on our nutrient loss reduction strategy with pollution from agricultural runoff, not only have we not gotten better, we have gotten worse. So in the time that we put this strategy together, the data that is being looked at says that we're actually creating more pollution from agriculture. And so we really want to make a difference on it. I know we've done a really great cover crop insurance discount program that has been really widely adopted. We've gotten that funded. We've been working on funding our soil and water conservation districts. But we're gonna need a little more to get there. So this is not on this one, but we're working on it. We also have several bills on pesticides and herbicides. And there's a new study with Prairie Rivers Network where they're looking at the pesticide damage to trees, especially oak trees. We're thinking it's dicamba, but a lot of them are showing up with 2,4-D, and it is really destroying our oak trees. And in real remote areas, you'll go in and you'll find pesticide damage from drift. And so figuring out how we can address that, we're gonna have a couple of bills on. Local food infrastructure, water. I do have a ton of bills, but some of these, not the ones on this list that we thought we were going to prioritize. We've got a couple of urban flooding bills, a little bit more about PFAS and water. Just there are some really, really neat bills there this year. Microfiber filtration. We're going to be working on lead service lines, although that's also a piece that maybe there's less federal funding coming in. But water quality, another piece that we're working on. And I think that's, some of our lobby days that are coming up. If you ever want to come to Springfield and join us, March 5th is soil health. March 20th, the Coalition for Plastic Reduction is doing a zero waste lobby day. April 19th, there's a little land trust conservation lobby day. And in May, we'll do our climate action lobby day again. We did have a lobby day January 7th, which was during lame duck, which was amazing, but I was being real risky in doing it because we knew the weather might not be good, and it did snow 6 inches in Springfield a couple days before, but we still had 300 people come. And, one of the things that we were betting on is that they would not cancel, and they didn't cancel, and they were bored, and they were captive. And so it was just a really great lobby day. I think everybody that was anybody down for it here? No, I know it's tough from up here, but everybody that came down said that they met with at least one of their lawmakers, which never had happened before. And some people got a whole hour with them. So, they were not doing anything that day. And so we really had a good one, but we'll be back there in May. It's just really important to show a lot of support for these issues in Springfield. So I think that's it. And that's just my email. Oh, great. And so, thank you. And I'm happy. I wanted to leave a bunch of time for questions because I know this is a group that's really engaged, but I'm happy to take questions on anything. Do you want them said into the microphone or me to repeat them?
Here, I'll walk around the microphone. How's that?
Okay.
You can't go.
Oh, you can't go far. Why don't we ask the questions and I'll repeat them? And I saw Nancy first back there. Nancy there. Nancy Williamson. So many Nancy.
I have a question about agency funding in Illinois. And I'm on the Natural Land Institute Board, which is a land conservation board. And last Monday, I learned that Ducks Unlimited and Pheasants Forever had contacted us about going for a NACA grant. And one of their information they imparted is there is no more money in the DNR budget for NACA grants or basically acquisition. And then the other piece of information was that the GIGO grants from IEPA,
Yeah,
Green Infrastructure
Green infrastructure
grants,
grants.
only 3.5 of the applications were funded. So I wonder if you can give me some information about both of those agencies and their funding.
Yeah, so just for those online, Nancy had asked a question about agency funding, especially the NACA and the green infrastructure grants from DNR and IEPA, and those not being available and not coming out, and also, we had 4 years of available federal funding. What did we do? There's some questions. I mean, I'm definitely like. I really want to leave everybody with hope and that we're hopeful about things, but also I understand how serious of a situation we're in right now. Because, there is the state agencies itself, but we, like, especially IEPA, for example, gets a lot of federal money. And there's federal money from prior to the Trump administration that, that we've gotten in the door. There's some that's been awarded that we're going to have to sue to see if we can get. There's some where, like, for example, the Department of Ag has several months of work that the federal government owes its money for. And is that going to be paid? So those are all questions there. But like the bigger, scarier thing is we're entering into a year that has a $3 billion budget shortfall. And with IEPA, for example, it's almost fully federally funded or from permits, fines, and fees, and like a lot of federal funding. And if this Congress and maybe the executive decide they just don't want to give it money anymore, we could just not have any money at the IEPA. And that is probably one of the most terrifying things for me in how we come up with that deficit. I think there is one of the things that I often say to people is that, like we're waiting 5 years for styrofoam, right? That's not ideal, but it'll pass. And if I pass, and if I introduced a bill that said styrofoam gets banned tomorrow, it won't pass. So the 5-year bill, better than the one that won't pass. But my corollary to that is that the people at agencies matter, because if I pass an ideal bill and the people who are working on it don't do anything, nothing happens, and the ideal bill didn't matter. But if I pass a mediocre bill and I got great people, I can have great results. And so I know, there's a lot of work being done to bring in more great people, but definitely those budgets make me nervous. And I adore our governor. I'll just say that before I criticize him. And one of the places where I think that the governor could be doing more is oversight of some of the state agencies and making sure that he's providing them vision and direction and really getting them motivated. And I think there's a lot of federal money that we missed bringing in that we could have. And that's real sad. And we haven't had an agency that has worked to bring in federal money for the whole state since the Ryan administration. And so, there's been efforts to bring in federal money, but each agency's been like, you're on your own, write this application, bring it in. And so it's stuff that I'm always pushing on. I'm always pushing on more to happen. Always pushing on us to buy more land. Yeah, I think one of the biggest pieces DNR bought was in the entire Pritzker administration was a 2,900 acre piece of land that belonged to Darren Bailey's dad. So we could do better. We could do better. We could do better. Yeah, go ahead, Nancy. Nancy.
Luckily in our area, we do have representatives in the state legislature that will listen to us and are willing to meet with us, but it's hard to get people to drive down from this area with their own cars. So years ago, IEC was able to provide buses for us for the lobby days.
Mhm.
Can that happen again?
Yeah, so Nancy's asking whether we can provide buses, and we can. What we've done lately is, we have people express that they want to fill a bus, and then we provide some deadlines as to when it needs to be 50% full. And so like that's what we're working on. Otherwise, we've done some vans and stuff, but if you want to get one, and you can reach certain numbers, because we also, for the pollution impact, don't want 6 people on a 50-person bus. But yeah, but that's what we've done in the past, and we indicated that way in the registration form that this bus is possible if it meets registration. So we can do that, and I can put you in touch with Hannah on our staff, who's going to set up the May one. So come to Springfield, but also we can figure out some days where the lawmakers are likely to be here, and maybe figure out some meetings we can have. So that's totally doable as well. So they're good people here that we can meet with. Yeah, go ahead.
Another Nancy.
Another Nancy. Nancy. You need a singing group.
So yeah, my question is, recently we just heard there's some studies that have shown that there's problems. They're discovering nanoplastics in people's brains, and how is that translating into what you do and what we can do and what we can talk to our representatives about? Because it's frightening, and I think we all know about plastic and how evil it is. I always say I would have to crawl through the desert for a day before I would drink out of a plastic water bottle. But there are people that buy it by the case every week, and so what is going on that we can support with the nanoplastics?
Yeah, so Nancy was asking a question about what's going on with support for the nanoplastics, and there's an article, I believe National Geographic had a piece, and it's a spoon size amount is being found in people's brains of plastic.
It's creepy.
Yeah, it's creepy that there's that much plastic. And I think, unfortunately, there has been, like when I'm talking to lawmakers about things, there's been such an attack on science, and it's sort of like, is this real or is it not? But this is peer-reviewed science that is being published when we're looking at different plastics, and we don't even know the full scope of what may happen. And I think there's a piece of like, how do we have compassion for individual actions? Like, we all should be working to reduce plastics, but what's more important to me is how do we get the policy right? Because when I was in Germany, the train there, on the train, like the Amtrak, the high-speed rail, they only provide reusables. So you get a ceramic mug, you get a glass of water, and that's the only way you can buy things on the train. Like there's other places that we should be way more reusable before. But that was the piece there. Or even when they do have a plastic water bottle, the cap has to stay attached to it. And there's actually a bill on that this year with Senator Laura Murphy has a bill on making sure the caps stay attached. But I think it's, and even when you go get in any European country, you get a coffee cup, they never come with the plastic lid, they come with the paper lid. And there's been some incentives and some policies that push that in place. I think that like part of it is important, and I will do all sorts of things to make sure that I'm, cutting my individual impact, but making sure that for people, we're putting together the policies that just don't make it an option. We want to make it easy for people to choose. Like, the default option needs to be the environmental choice on any of these items. And so we've got a whole range of things that we're doing this year. And like I said, I'm hopeful foam, There may be bags, utensils, all those pieces. We do have an extended producer responsibility bill that I don't think is going to go this year. There's some studies that are being done, but Minnesota has one, Colorado has one. And one of the effects of banning some of those of the worst plastics is that we won't have to deal with those when we get to the extended producer responsibility packaging bill. Like those won't be pieces on the table. We've already decided what we're doing there. But you know, one of the things in Minnesota, those laws, and this is where the manufacturers pay for the disposal of the items they're creating or the recycling or reuse. So in those states, you create incentives, and you create incentives to like if you are creating something that's less hazardous or that actually is recyclable, then you are then it costs you less. And that's one of the problems that's happening now is it costs the manufacturers less, it's costs the business less. So lots and lots of work being done on it. And like, I don't know how much more we need to learn about plastics to do something about it. So yeah, it's
Sometimes those big alarming news segments though are helpful.
yeah.
Because it helps to make the general public say, hey, this is a problem.
You know? And lawmakers coming at us. So not Nancy, go ahead.
Nancy. But not Nancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You did say it. Embrace that song now. I was named after that song. I was born the year after, September after that song came out. With this renewable energy and the solar energy, is the way Illinois is meeting its solar energy requirements through private businesses opening these facilities, or is it coming from the utilities themselves?
So our utilities aren't allowed to own power generation in Illinois. So ComEd and Ameren owns power generation, not in Illinois, but they are not allowed to own it in Illinois. And that was part of, we have a regulated supply market and a deregulated demand market in Illinois, which has been really good for energy prices. But the utilities are not allowed to own it. So it has to be private, or it can be public sector owners through government. So like municipal utilities, often they own the solar field, but yeah, it's not utilities, it's private owners. Yep.
Too, right?
Uh-huh.
I think each county, maybe their environmental justice communities that they opened up these solar
Yes.
co-ops. Which
Yeah.
I'm very excited about. So I just didn't know if you work with.
Yes, we do work with Flax and Green. That might also be part of this like microgrid project that ComEd is doing a pilot for. But oh my, they can't. Okay, this one, should we use the other one? Is this better for the Zoom? I also can put, oh, maybe it was that the question, but she's asking a question about whether utilities can own solar. Okay, here, we'll try the different one. Yeah. Okay, let's try this. Let's try this. But yeah, but Flax and Green, fantastic organization. Naomi Davis is really great.
Yeah.
They got a whole bunch of federal money that I think is in the door already, so they're safe. But they got a whole bunch of money to do some really cool projects. So yeah, great. Kim, yeah.
Thank you, Jen, for being here. It's really fun to hear all the great information. I wondered if you could go back just a little bit to the conversation about diesel and what's going on with that. I know you know this, but McHenry County is in the top 12 in worst air pollution, and we talk a lot about this with students, and I don't know what to offer them in terms of what's going on. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about what you got.
Yeah, so Kim asked me a question about McHenry County being up there in terms of air pollution and students not knowing what to do about it. And this is, I brought up the piece, I guess the stats were enough that McHenry was brought out of being in non-attainment in the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, that they were removed. I think that may have been the Rauner administration maybe not wanting to do some work. And so I think one of the big challenges around air pollution right now is diesel. And, the trucking association will be like, The trucks are 98% cleaner than they were. But when you got a lot of trucks doing a lot of online delivery and they're idling, which there's state laws on idling, but they need to be locally enforced. So if your cops don't want to give a ticket to a bus driver, which is hard to do, I understand, it's not going to get enforced. But so I think one of the pieces we're working on is, especially with small light trucks, like how do we electrify them so that they become zero emissions, especially if they just have a particular route and it's easy to plug in. So that's one of the pieces that we're working with, the advanced clean truck standards. And so that's a piece on air pollution. I think transportation is important. Hopefully we can improve the transit options up here so people have the ability to get downtown faster. I mean, imagine there's a lot of ways that Naperville is almost a similar distance. Maybe it's 15 miles more, but you can get a Naperville express train in 30 minutes downtown. And so if you could have something more like that. You want to ask the question from Zoom? Great, go ahead.
With so much changing so rapidly, it's hard to know what is most urgent to address now. Where should we focus our energy and with who?
Yeah, so I just, for you on Zoom, just read the Zoom question about urgency. I don't know if they can hear, but yeah, I think, when we look at what we choose for our priorities for the year, because sometimes people are like, why is my thing not on the priority list? I look at urgency, like how important is the issue to get done quickly. I look at impact, I look at passability, and then I look at racial equity when we look at the spectrum, how we choose priorities. And, to some of us, we're building to go against some of the really hard to challenge industries. I find it really hard to challenge the agricultural industry, not necessarily farmers, because farmers are often on the same page, but the agricultural industry, the folks that own tons of land and have tenant farmers, like that, that's something that's really hard to move the bar over. So when we try pesticide stuff, it is absolutely urgent, but we don't have the political juice yet to do it. So continuing to build that political juice, continuing to build awareness. I guess on some of these, we'll tell you where you're needed when we need you. So listening to that is really important because we have there's a lot of ways we have a really good view of the ground game of who's going to vote for what and what can possibly move. And so, paying attention in that way and all acting together, really critical. Yeah. Any questions? Okay, any last questions in here? Yeah. Cool. Well, that's my email if anybody needs anything. And then our website, islandbiro.org. We're also Island Biro on social media. So I just want to thank all of you for listening and having me tonight.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Take your microphone. You won't have
I'm not
to
taking this
worry
to
about
go.
it anymore. Okay. Thank you, Jen. And if Jen will be here for a little bit longer, but she wants to get home just get back to the city before the weather hits. So we're going to try and get her out the door as soon as possible. Leslie, you ready?
Anybody have any news? All right, we will come by. I think. Let's do this.
You can't go too far.
If you have an announcement this evening, we'll have you come up front, get a minute as always, and tell us who you are and who you represent if that's important. Welcome.
My name is Nancy Gonziorek, and I'm with the Wildflower Preservation and Propagation Committee of McHenry County. Oh, second one. Okay. And it's your lucky day. Does everybody know what's happening this month?
Yes, the
The natural
landscape seminar.
Yes, the Natural Landscaping Seminar. It's a wonderful day. It's a full day on the 22nd of February at MCC. We have great presenters and a very yummy lunch. We don't do box lunches or cafeteria stuff. We have a really good catered lunch. we're going to have Najeen Almasi, who is the successor of Chris Anker at the Cook County Forest Preserve, talking about coyotes. And then we have Kim Eierman talking about the Pollinator Victory Garden. She's a nationally recognized author. And then we will have Greg Spirius from the Illinois Natural History Survey, talking about the history of fire in Illinois. And I have heard him talk. It's a very fascinating talk, and you will learn things about fire and when to do it and what to do that you did not know, except maybe Steve Byers, who knows it all. And then the great Ed Collins, 40 years of conservation in McHenry County. And he wants everybody to know, even though we may feel a little despair right now, he has lots of good to talk about, and we're going to have a special surprise at the end of the day. So stay tuned.
Brenda.
I want to get up here before the battery dies.
Oh, wow.
Hi, I'm Brenda Dolfers. I am representing University of Illinois Extension, and I am going to just real quick tell you that Extension has an online course coming up. I can't tell you a whole lot about it, other than I believe it's going to be like 4 sessions on Wednesdays. It is a compost ambassador program. So if you are a composter, if you want to compost more, if you want to know more about what you're doing, this is something you might want to look into. And you can email me at my last name, D as in David, AHL, F as in Frank, ORS as in Sam, at illinois.edu.